everyone, I'm Christina and we're here today with Amanda Snow from Endicott College's Counseling Center and Rose Kelleher, a student here and eating disorder recovery activist. Today is the third day of National Eating Disorder Awareness Week, and we are so excited to be participating and talking about this with you today. This year, the theme that the National Eating Disorder Association came up with is "It's time to talk about it." This is so important because eating disorders are often associated with a lot of shame and hiding. So Rose and I reached out to some of our friends on social media to see what they wanted to know about this topic and got some very interesting questions that we're going to talk about today. So let's just get right into it. So the first question that we received so this question's directly for Amanda. What are some of the most common challenges college students are facing regarding weight and body image?
So in the Counseling Center, we do see a lot of students that come down needing some support around body image or learning how to eat healthy now that they're at college for the first time, or how to manage, the social perspective piece. They're often comparing themselves to their friends or to other people that they're seeing on social media, different accounts that are out there. So even if it's not the primary issue that students come in, needing to talk about, it's pretty much something that comes up, in our conversation in terms of how they relate to their peers or their friendships or even people back home. We do have some students that come in that have been identified, working with eating disorders or disordered eating already. And so that's something that they already know about. And so we're just working with them to kind of help them keep on track and, maintain the progress that they're making. For some students, it's the first time that this has come up for them, because in the transition to college, sometimes that newfound freedom of I can eat whatever I want, whenever I want, or not having people keeping tabs on them and checking up on if they're eating or if they're eating the right things. Sometimes that can lead to some bad habits, and that can get into be a problematic thing for them. So sometimes we're doing a lot of that initial assessment and trying to help someone look critically at how are things going for you? How is this impacting your life? And that's the part where we try to focus the most attention on is, how is this impacting you? Is this something that's getting in the way of things that you normally want to do in your life? Is it affecting your friendships? Is it affecting your ability to participate in sports? Is it getting in the way of hanging out with your friends or anything like that? So that's usually where we start. But it is something that definitely comes up, I would say, more likely than not with the students that we see.
So it's mostly a problem when the food starts getting in the way of the social aspects of their lives, like going out with friends or
Yeah, I would say like their behaviors around food. So if some of the students that we're talking about, if these are people who are avoiding eating, then they're probably skipping meals, so they're not seeing their friends as often, or they don't want to go off campus to go to dinner as much, and so then they're missing out on social time, and sometimes they get a hard time from their friends about that, because they're not going out and doing those kind of things, or they're feeling that self-conscious piece about going to the Callahan or trying to avoid that late night lodge run that everyone's doing, and that can impact that piece. And for some students that are maybe struggling with overeating or trying to keep their eating balance or their eating behaviors in check, then it's again that social piece of they're, especially being in the Callahan, they feel like they're kind of like the spotlight's on them, and how do they work around that piece. So that's a big piece of what we see.
Great. So what are some of the common signs and symptoms that you look for when trying to assess if somebody has a problem or not?
Well, I think we start with the mindset of, how are they looking at it when they come in, in terms of, is it something that they've been, struggling with for a while? Is it new? And is it something that they consider a problem or not? And we kind of try and start there. But then we try and kind of get, to the specifics, pretty quickly in terms of, so how many meals are you eating a day? What do you consider a meal? And kind of get a good picture of exactly what their eating behaviors are. And then if any of our staff are concerned enough to think that this might be crossing the line from something that's unhealthy to healthy, we'll recommend that the student, do a consultation with a medical professional. So, either referring them to the staff at FMA that we have here on campus, or encouraging them to get back in touch with their primary care doctor at home and try to see if we can kind of get a better picture of their health and their well-being, and go from there.
So another question that we received online from a couple of different people were, how do I support a friend or a roommate who might be struggling with an eating disorder or eating disorder behaviors? So what is the best way to deal with something like that?
I think it depends on whether or not the person that you're concerned about is aware that they have distorted thoughts or distorted behaviors. And if they are aware, then really just being supportive of them and letting them know that you're there for them without judgment, asking them what best way you can support them. Yes, exactly.
Sure.
If they're not sure if they have some eating disorder tendencies or they haven't realized it themselves, a good thing to do is to support them regardless. Just, continue being a good friend or roommate to them. If they do bring it up, encourage them to go to the counseling center or, talk to a family member if needed. If they're uncomfortable with that, then just continue to be there for them.
Yeah, because you can't really force somebody to want to get help.
Exactly.
As hard as it is to see maybe a friend struggle, you can't really force somebody. So, yeah, that's very good advice. Which brings me to my next question: is some people are so embarrassed about it and shameful about it. And I actually got a question on Facebook last night from a college student. She was a female, and she said, I think I might have an eating disorder, but I don't look like I do. I don't feel underweight. So she said, is it true? Like, do I, even though I may have the symptoms of it? So a lot of people think that they may not if they're not underweight. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think looking at, specifically like the definition, like in kind of what we use for the diagnostic criteria of an eating disorder, there's also like the behavioral piece, that it's not just the bottom line of how much does someone weigh or, what does their body type look like, that a lot of it is the behavior and the distorted thoughts that Rose mentioned, in terms of what they're thinking of how their body looks or what their relationship with food is, and I think that's kind of like the bigger picture to look at. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with how someone looks or even in that piece, but kind of like going back to, okay, well, how much are they actually eating, and how much are they purging, if that's what they're doing, or taking care of themselves, like how are they doing that? So there's not just one piece that kind of defines like, yes, you have an eating disorder, or no, you don't. There's a lot of different things that need to be considered.
And I also think that is a big problem with the stigma of eating disorders, like thinking that you don't look sick enough to have an eating disorder or being ashamed about it. And that's really why it's so important to talk about it with other people and to really understand how to support other people and also how to support yourself.
And going off of that, just trying to remind people that because there isn't one definition of an eating disorder, that I think the stereotypical idea that most people think of when they think of an eating disorder is they're thinking of someone who is incredibly underweight and someone who looks too thin and too skinny, and because they're not eating enough. And that would be, symbolic and representational of one type of eating disorder. But there are other types of eating disorders where someone could be carrying at a more normal weight, for their body type, but it has to do with, how they're eating or if they're purging or overeating. One of the eating disorder types is binge eating, which doesn't have anything to do with not eating enough food, but it's rather, how much the person is eating and how they're handling that within their body. So there isn't just one look, or there isn't just one piece of how someone may look if they are having, some struggles with eating disorders. It could run a whole range.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of that is from the media that we see, and when eating disorders are usually depicted in movies, it's mostly the thin white person, and it's rarely anybody else. So it's important to know that it can affect anybody, and it you may not even know they're struggling with it. So for those people who are struggling, maybe on campus or not, how, like for this context on campus, how would somebody get started if this brings up any kind of idea in their head that, oh, maybe I do have a problem, like I think I may want to get help?
So obviously I'm going to make a plug for the Counseling Center and mention that the Counseling Center is a free service that we have on campus, open to all Endicott students. And we have a number of counselors available to meet with students, even if it is just an exploratory, like, I don't know if this is a thing for me or not, I want to get some more information, and maybe just have like a consultation with someone, or someone who may come in and say, you know what, this has been something for me and I'm ready to work on it now. We also, are available to do friend consultations. We've had, people come in the past and say, I'm worried about my roommate, I'm worried about my teammate, and I want to know how to talk to them, I want to know how to support them, and we're available to do that. So that would be my little plug to come down.
Okay. So if they want to make an appointment, they could just go in and...
You can come down to the office. We're in Lower Callahan, in one of the back corners across from FMA, across from the health center. And you can speak with Sarah, our amazing administrative assistant, to set up an appointment. You can also fill out the intake paperwork online. If you go to the Counseling Center website on the Endicott website, there's a link that you can click that will take you to all of the intake paperwork that you can fill out from the comfort of your own room, and that gets sent to us directly in our secure server, and then Sarah will reach out to schedule an appointment.
Great. So just to relate it back to the National Eating Disorder Awareness theme, this may be a really loaded question, but like maybe we can narrow it down to just one thing. What is a tip or a way that we can start the conversation about eating disorders and help get the word out there and let people know that it's not anything to be ashamed of?
For me personally, how I started to share my story and to raise awareness was through Facebook. I started sharing articles about eating disorders or about recovery, and I think that's, for people who might be uncomfortable about talking about it in person, that's a really good way to do it because it gets the information out there. Other people can choose whether or not to read it, but it's, it's almost anonymous because you're doing it through a screen.
Absolutely. You can get the information by just simply reading or watching a video, because there's so many videos out there too, and so many people are making content, which is really great. So that's all the time we have today, but please, if you are interested in this, share your story, educate others, or connect to some of these resources that we talked about today and other people like your friends and family. Anything you think that might be helpful to others who are struggling with this devastating illness. If you have more questions that we didn't answer today, tomorrow at 6 p.m. is the Ask Me Anything panel. Rose and Amanda will both be on the panel, and that's in Gully's in the side theater room. Come and ask your questions anonymously just to learn more. Thank you for joining us.